Sharon Stone's life took a dramatic turn when she faced a near-death experience that left her at the brink. Abandoned and left to die, she says she encountered Jesus, and what happened next is nothing short of life-changing. What did she see, and how did it reshape her life?
Sharon Stone shot to stardom in the early 90s, thanks to hits like Total Recall and Basic Instinct. And let's be real, who doesn't remember that leg-crossing scene in Basic Instinct? It wasn't just a movie moment, it turned her into a global stardom overnight. But turns out, Stone dropped a bombshell in her memoir, The Beauty of Living Twice. She revealed that she was actually tricked into filming that infamous scene. What's more, she even tried taking legal action to stop it from hitting the big screen. But despite the controversy, Stone's acting career didn't miss a beat. She's been in the game for over 40 years, proving she's more than just one iconic moment. And that memoir's title? Turns out it's not just a catchy phrase. It's rooted in a second chance at life. Back in 2001, Stone faced a health crisis so severe it could have ended everything, her career and even her life. Years later, in 2017, she opened up about the terrifying near-death experience during a panel focused on raising awareness about neurological disorders in women. What exactly happened, and how did she bounce back? In 2001, Sharon Stone experienced a stroke, and the scariest part is that she didn't even realize it at first. By the time she made it to the hospital 3 days later, doctors told her she had suffered a brain hemorrhage. For those unfamiliar, a stroke happens when blood flow to the brain is disrupted, cutting off oxygen and causing potentially life-threatening damage. Add bleeding inside the brain, and you've got a brain hemorrhage, a double dose of danger. She explained that she had been unknowingly bleeding into her brain for several days before finally going to the hospital. Things escalated quickly. She lost consciousness upon arrival, collapsing as soon as she got out of the truck. Doctors rushed her into a CT scan machine to figure out what was happening, but she was completely unconscious throughout the process. When she eventually woke up, the strange quietness of the emergency room immediately tipped her off that something was very wrong. Sharon described lying on a table in a silent room, with only the doctor present, no frantic nurses, no rushing around. That's never a good sign, she recalled thinking. The doctor, looking at her with deep compassion, confirmed her fears when she asked if she was dying. Stroking her hair gently, he told her she was bleeding into her brain. Her response? A resigned acknowledgement. Okay, this is happening. In those heavy moments, Sharon called her mother, and the medical team prepared to transfer her to a neurological hospital since they didn't have the resources to handle her condition. While in the hospital for 6 days, Stone described seeing a recurring white light and even visions of friends who had passed away. It sounds surreal, but she vividly recalls the exact moment she came back and felt like herself again. In her words, she crossed over to the other side and returned. How's that for a life-altering experience? During the interview panel, Sharon described the sensation of being swept upward, entering a tunnel of light that seemed to stretch for miles. At the top, she saw familiar faces, people she had been close to or cared for before their deaths. They appeared calm and welcoming, almost as if assuring her everything was fine and she'd be joining them. But just as she felt ready to cross over, the vision was interrupted. She described a jarring physical sensation, as if she had been kicked in the chest with incredible force. Whether it was from defibrillation or something else, the impact snapped her back to reality. Gasping and sitting up on the gurney, she heard someone ask what was happening. The doctor instructed everyone not to touch her as she regained consciousness. And in true Sharon Stone fashion, her first request was hilariously human. "I really have to pee." The next phase of her journey was grueling. Tests showed her vertebral artery had completely ruptured, causing her brain to bleed for 9 days. Sharon underwent a 7-hour emergency surgery, followed by a recovery process that stretched over 2 years. Reflecting on the experience, she admitted it was strange and beautiful at the same time, leaving James, her interviewer, utterly speechless. It's hard not to marvel at Sharon's resilience. From that surreal journey through light-filled tunnels to her fight to recover, she didn't just survive. She came back with a renewed perspective on life and death. Who else could go through that and still share their story with such raw honesty and a touch of humor? You see, the aftermath of the stroke wasn't just physical. Although she now takes neurological medication, it reshaped her entire perspective on life and death. Stone said the experience wiped away any fear of dying. She described it as close, comforting, and far from the terrifying idea many people imagine. Death. It's very near and very safe. It's not a faraway or scary thing, she shared. Over the past 20 years, Stone has continued to work steadily, though she's mostly stayed out of the Hollywood spotlight. And it's anyone's guess if that's by choice or circumstance. When her name does pop up in headlines, it's often tied to that infamous leg crossing scene in Basic Instinct. Whether it's her clarifying what she did or didn't agree to during filming or director Paul Verhoeven reigniting old debates, the scene seems to follow her everywhere. But here's the thing. While those debates grab attention, Sharon's been quietly building a life that deserves just as much focus. Beyond the spotlight, she's been nurturing her family, carving out a meaningful career, and taking on roles that play with the larger-than-life persona she created in her early days. There's so much more to her story than one moment on screen. She's a living example of how to evolve and thrive, even when life throws some serious hurdles. First off, Sharon Stone hasn't exactly been twiddling her thumbs for the past 20 years. One look at her filmography makes it clear. She's been booked and busy. Sure, there hasn't been another career-defining role on the level of her iconic part in Casino or the polarizing Basic Instinct. But don't think for a second she's been chilling in a rocking chair knitting blankets. Instead, Stone has gravitated towards smaller indie films, taking on gritty, complex female characters that pack a punch. Let's just say you probably won't catch her in the next Transformers, even if Anthony Hopkins himself sends her an invite. In fact, Stone has been actively dismantling her sex symbol persona, challenging the very image that Hollywood has clung to for decades. Take 2013 as a prime example. She played a repressed mother in Lovelace and a lonely woman paying for intimacy in Woody Allen's Fading Gigolo. These aren't the glamorous roles people expect from someone once synonymous with seduction. And that's the point. In a 2014 interview with The Independent, Stone didn't hold back, cheekily suggesting that shame was probably invented by a man. Whether or not she was throwing shade at the fallout from Basic Instinct, it's clear she's not afraid to play with the public's assumptions about her and flip them on their head. And it's not just films where she's been making her mark. Stone has also found a home on television, proving that her range as an actress goes well beyond what anyone might have imagined back in her 90s heyday. So, whether she's in indie films or TV dramas, Stone is still showing us she's more than capable of keeping her audience guessing and watching. After her aneurysm and the grueling recovery that followed, Sharon Stone admits she was no longer Hollywood's golden girl. Instead, she was pushed to the back of the line. A humbling experience for someone who had once ruled the silver screen. Even a guest spot on Law & Order, SVU came with its own challenges, as she struggled to remember her lines. But if there's one thing we know about Sharon, it's that she doesn't back down. She powered through, and her persistence paid off with a string of successes in television. Stone has truly found her groove on the small screen. While she'd dabbled in TV before with appearances on shows like The Practice and Roseanne, it's only in recent years that she's made it a serious focus. One standout role was as the President of the United States in TNT's Agent X, a show she also proudly executive produced. Not content with just one hit, Stone followed up with Mosaic, where she starred as beloved children's author Olivia Lake, adding yet another layer to her versatile career. And let's not forget her time narrating the children's series, Harold and the Purple Crayon, perhaps a nod to her life as a devoted single mother. But Sharon Stone isn't just about showbiz. She's been using her platform to make a difference. Whether through her roles or her advocacy, Stone has become a powerful voice for women's rights. Balancing her work, her family, and her activism, She's proven time and again that reinvention is her superpower. Stone has made it her mission to champion women's rights, fearlessly speaking out on issues like the gender pay gap and the Me Too movement. She's never shied away from tough conversations, using her voice to call out the inequalities that Hollywood and society at large often try to sweep under the rug. In 2015, at a fashion event hosted by her sister Kelly, Stone got real about the backlash she faced after Basic Instinct, not for the controversy, but for daring to ask for fair pay. She revealed how no one wanted to pay me after the movie, even though it had cemented her as a household name. Sitting at her kitchen table in tears, Stone recounted how her manager had to help her navigate the frustration of being undervalued. Despite refusing to work for free, a bold move for a woman in Hollywood at the time, she was still paid significantly less than her male co-stars. In a candid interview with AARP, she joined forces with fellow icons Jane Fonda and Alfre Woodard to talk about aging and the relentless pressure for women to stay desirable in an industry that often equates beauty with worth. The trio didn't hold back, shedding light on what it takes to navigate a world where men tend to call the shots. Stone also got personal in a conversation with Luxury London, diving deeper into the strength required for women to thrive in Hollywood. She explained how her bold, tough-as-nails characters mirror that ongoing fight for respect and recognition. It's not just about surviving, it's about carving out a space where women are seen and heard, no matter their age or what box society tries to shove them into. Through her words and work, Sharon continues to prove she's more than just an actress. She's a fighter for women's rights, a voice for change, and a living example of resilience in an industry that often writes women off far too soon. Not content with only using her voice for oppressed women, Sharon has also been putting in the work for over 2 decades. Since 1995, she's served as the global campaign chair of the American Foundation for AIDS Research, a role she initially signed on for just 3 years. But in 1998, she made it clear she was in it for the long haul, committing to the cause until a safe and effective AIDS vaccine is discovered, a mission she's still passionately pursuing. Her time as chair has been nothing short of extraordinary. Stone doesn't do anything halfway, and her efforts with the organization prove that. From raising awareness to spearheading major fundraising initiatives, she's left an undeniable mark. In August 2000, she hosted an auction during the Venice Film Festival that pulled in over $500,000 in one night. Just one example of how her star power has directly benefited the cause. Her dedication hasn't gone unnoticed either. In 2013, she was honored with the Peace Summit Award, recognizing her incredible contributions to global health advocacy. For Sharon, activism isn't just a side gig, it's a core part of who she is. While many know her for her unforgettable roles on screen, her legacy off-screen might be even more impactful. In 2015, Sharon turned a formal event into a powerful act of giving. While attending the Pelosio Building Peace Award in Milan as a guest of honor, Stone could have simply smiled for the cameras, enjoyed the accolades, and called it a day. But that's not her style. Instead, in a room packed with some of the wealthiest and most influential construction industry CEOs in the world, she decided to take action. On the spot, she orchestrated an impromptu auction to raise funds for building schools in Africa, channeling her charisma and passion into a moment that was impossible to ignore. It wasn't just about collecting checks, it was about creating real change and using her platform to make a difference. That one spontaneous moment at the Pelosio Building Peace Award turned into something monumental. Sharon Stone's impromptu auction raised enough pledges to fund the construction of 28 schools in Africa. Yep, 28 schools, all from one spark of inspiration. Stone later revealed the idea came to her after meeting a businessman earlier in the day who promised to fund 2 schools in exchange for a photo with her. She didn't just accept his offer, she ran with it, multiplying that energy into something far bigger. But Sharon's legacy isn't just about her work on the world stage. It's deeply personal too. As a single mother, she's adopted 3 sons, building a family that's clearly her pride and joy. She adopted her 3 sons, Roan Joseph in 2000, Laird Vaughn in 2005, and Quinn Kelly in 2006, and has kept them mostly away from the limelight. However, in 2017, her boys stepped into the spotlight for a special reason. They presented her with a Mother of the Year award at the Associates for Breast and Prostate Cancer Studies Mother's Day Luncheon in Los Angeles. During her heartfelt acceptance speech, Stone opened up about how motherhood didn't come easily for her, calling it a journey filled with challenges. Reflecting on her life as a single mom, she told people that after adopting Laird, she found herself surrounded by more love, kindness, and friendship than ever before. Despite her fame, she's fiercely protective of her kids' privacy, rarely sharing glimpses of them. One exception was her 59th birthday in 2017, when she posted a lighthearted photo with her sons on Twitter. Her eldest, Roan, also made a rare public appearance, accompanying her to the 2018 Golden Globes. But Sharon isn't just about acting, activism, and parenting. She's got a musical side too. While it's not her main gig, dabbling in music adds yet another layer to her already multifaceted life. Is there anything she doesn't do? So yeah, she's also a songwriter, and she's been using her creative talents to make a difference. In an interview with The Independent, Stone shared that her very first published song, Come Together Now, was written to support relief efforts for Hurricane Katrina as part of a fundraising album. Not only did her song make the cut, but it was also the title track, a pretty big deal for her debut effort. But she didn't stop there. Stone revealed she wrote a song in Argentina about a poet and writer who was tragically murdered, and she also released a track in Sweden called Let's Kiss. Songwriting, much like everything else she does, seems to come naturally to her. Stone explained that she earned a writing scholarship to college at just 15, and storytelling has always been her thing. Over the years, she's even had short stories published in magazines, a talent she's hinted might turn into something bigger if the right opportunity comes along. Oh, and did we mention she was also the face of a high fashion campaign? Because, of course, she was. Sharon Stone's connection to the world of luxury isn't just limited to red carpet appearances. Back in the year 2000, she teamed up with Louis Vuitton to design a special line of vanity cases. But these weren't just about high-end style. They raised over $3 million for AIDS research, blending her eye for fashion with her passion for activism. Fast forward to 2016, and Stone stepped even further into the fashion spotlight, starring in Austrian label Airfield's Spring-Summer campaign. Draped in bold, confident looks, Stone was the epitome of timeless allure. In an interview with Luxury London, she opened up about the concept of sexiness, explaining that it's not about the surface, but something deeper. For Stone, it's all about being present, having fun, and liking yourself enough to own your space. Before Sharon Stone lit up Hollywood, she got her start as a model, which is probably why stepping into the Airfield campaign felt like second nature. It's a role she slipped into effortlessly, showing that confidence and poise never go out of style. And let's be real, age has never been a roadblock for Stone. If anything, she's proof that charisma only grows with time, so don't be surprised if more high-fashion gigs come her way. But Stone isn't one to take herself too seriously, and her cameo in The Disaster Artist showed her playful side. She sent herself up as a hilariously bloodthirsty talent agent, leaning into the over-the-top satire of the film with her usual wit and charm. It was a fun nod to her industry roots and a reminder that Stone isn't afraid to poke fun at the world that made her famous. Sharon literally stole the show in the film, which was James Franco's heartwarming and hilarious ode to Tommy Wiseau and Greg Sestero's cult classic, The Room. In one memorable scene, she's summoned by a terrified assistant and immediately zeroes in on Dave Franco's Greg with razor-sharp focus. Without missing a beat, she claws at his naive enthusiasm and declares, "You're mine." It's a wickedly funny, self-aware moment that perfectly skewers Hollywood stereotypes, while reminding everyone just how commanding Stone can be on screen. Even if her recent roles aren't top of mind, moments like this reaffirm why she's an enduring icon. But Sharon Stone's focus goes beyond the glitz and glamour of the industry. She's also about creating spaces that reflect her personality and style. Case in point, she built her dream house, a project that showcases not just her impeccable taste, but also her knack for turning any vision into a reality. When Sharon Stone set out to renovate the house she first bought during her Basic Instinct heyday, she didn't rush the process. Instead, she took her time crafting a space that's as unique and iconic as she is. Featured in a stunning spread in Architectural Digest, her home is a masterpiece of thoughtful design and personal touches. One standout feature? The dining room floor, which was sourced from an actual Swiss chateau. Because, of course, it was. Stone purchased the property back in 1993 at the peak of her breakout fame, after the intense public interest left her craving privacy. Over the years, the house has evolved into more than just a residence. It's become a reflection of her personality and style. "This house has its own voice," Stone shared, explaining that once she and her team understood that unique vibe, the design process clicked into place. It's the perfect blend of elegance, history, and individuality, just like Stone herself. With the help of her longtime friend and interior designer Douglas Truesdale, the renovation process took a full 4 years. But that's just Sharon's style. She doesn't rush anything. Truesdale noted that Stone's creative vision is always front and center, describing her as an artist with a capital A. Whether she's acting, taking photographs, or designing interiors, she approaches everything with unmatched energy and artistry. Truesdale couldn't help but gush about her innate sense of style, explaining that Stone's globe-trotting lifestyle has turned her into a sponge for visual inspiration. That deep well of creativity helped shape every detail of the home, making it a perfect reflection of her worldly, bold personality. With her knack for knowing what she wants and how to achieve it, the result is nothing short of extraordinary. And when it comes to bold choices, it doesn't stop at interior design. Stone was also handpicked to play yet another unforgettable villain, proving once again that she's still the queen of commanding the screen. Catherine Trammell from Basic Instinct cemented Sharon Stone as one of the most unforgettable villains in cinematic history. So, when Ryan Murphy, creator of American Horror Story, needed someone to match wits with the infamous Nurse Ratched in his One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest prequel, he knew exactly who to call. In Netflix's Ratched, Stone took on the role of Lenore Osgood, a fabulously eccentric and sinister character dripping with wealth and menace. And yes, she had a pet monkey, handpicked by Stone herself, of course. According to Town & Country, Murphy specifically wrote the role with Stone in mind, knowing her ability to bring complex villains to life like no one else can. Sharon Stone has been refreshingly candid about the struggles she's faced in Hollywood, especially during her 40s and 50s. She's admitted that during those years, she wasn't exactly flooded with offers. Even now, people still typecast her as the femme fatale from Basic Instinct. But Stone remains optimistic about carving a new path. Landing the role of Lenore Osgood in Ratched felt like a step in the right direction, a chance to remind everyone of her range. Still, it's frustrating to face the same outdated assumptions. Stone shared how people have told her she'd need to disappear into a character to be taken seriously. Her response? A sharp reminder, "Did you see Lovelace? That was me." And as for those who can't let go of her Basic Instinct days, Stone doesn't hold back. "People still want to see my boobs. I'm 62. It's like, really? Grow up." If there's one thing Sharon Stone doesn't tolerate, it's being boxed into anyone else's expectations. And speaking of moving forward, Stone has even ventured into the world of online dating. It seems that whether it's her career or her personal life, she's all about rewriting the rules and refusing to be limited by anyone's outdated ideas. Dating in the modern world can be tricky for anyone, even Sharon Stone. When the legendary actress joined Bumble, she wasn't looking for drama, just someone special. Instead, she got blocked. Users assumed her profile had to be fake because honestly, who expects to match with Sharon Stone? Bumble booted her from the app. Stone wasn't having it. She took to Twitter to call out the situation, asking, "Hey Bumble, is being me exclusionary? Don't shut me out of the hive." Bumble quickly responded, reinstating her account and apologizing for the mix-up. They even explained their verification system. Users need to mimic a pose in a selfie to prove they're real, to ensure no further bans for the ratchet star. After her public Bumble drama, Stone received an avalanche of dating requests. No surprise there. And while many celebrities swear by the exclusive app Raya, Sharon's not interested. She told Town & Country that on Raya, too many people were pretending to be things they weren't. Her sharpest dig? Like straight. For Sharon, authenticity is key, whether it's in Hollywood or on a dating app. Sharon Stone's near-death story is a powerful reminder that life isn't guaranteed. And for those who've come face to face with the brink of death, this truth hits harder than most of us can imagine. But here's the thing. While the rest of us shuffle through the grind of everyday life, school drop-offs, grocery runs, mindless scrolling, those who've had near-death experiences don't have the luxury of forgetting how fragile life really is. It's not just a bucket list wake-up call for them, it's a full-on mental reset. Let's be real, most of us know life is finite, but we rarely act like it. According to a 2019 study published in Psychological Science, people spend over 90% of their time focused on repetitive daily routines. Sure, routines bring comfort, but they also make it easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. It's only when we're hit with a reminder, whether it's a personal brush with mortality or hearing someone else's story, that we start asking, what am I actually doing with my time? Near-death experiences, often referred to as NDEs in research, go beyond just a scare. These moments can fundamentally change how people see the world. Neurologists have found that during these experiences, the brain releases a surge of chemicals, leading to sensations like the famous tunnel of light or out-of-body experiences. People who survive often describe a sense of clarity that's hard to shake, and it stays with them long after they return to normal life. Just like Sharon Stone, there are many other individuals who've had their own brushes with death to explore how it reshaped their sense of purpose. They've lived through what most of us fear, and the lessons they carry are ones we can all learn from. It's not just about ditching laundry day or deleting social media, though that wouldn't hurt. It's about rediscovering what makes your life meaningful and deciding to live it, not just drift through it. Curious about what these life-changing moments taught them, here's what they had to share. Jeffrey Olsen's story is one of unimaginable loss and, somehow, unimaginable growth. 25 years ago, what should have been a routine drive back home to Bountiful, Utah, turned into a nightmare. Olsen, his wife, and their 2 children were returning from an Easter family gathering when he nodded off behind the wheel. Traveling at over 75 miles per hour, the car flipped multiple times. When Olsen regained consciousness, pinned to the wreckage, he was faced with an unthinkable reality. His wife and infant son were gone. His older son had survived, but Olsen himself was gravely injured. The aftermath of the crash was grueling. Olsen had broken his back, suffered massive internal injuries from the seatbelt, and lost his leg to amputation. Over the next 6 months, he endured 18 surgeries and an agonizing recovery process. But even as his body healed, the emotional wounds ran deep. For over a decade, Olsen couldn't bring himself to speak about that fateful day. When he finally began to share his story, it wasn't just the raw pain that came to the surface. It was something extraordinary. Olsen revealed that during the accident, he had what he describes as a spiritual experience. While pinned in the car, he says he felt a profound connection to his wife and son, as if they were present, offering him comfort in the midst of the chaos. His near-death experience left him with a profound sense of awareness and purpose. Olsen describes the feeling of being given a choice, whether to stay or return and continue his life. Though he would face unimaginable challenges ahead, Olsen chose to come back, not just to survive, but to rebuild a life filled with meaning and intention. Olsen describes his near-death experience with a clarity and depth that's almost impossible to imagine. "My soul left my body in that moment," he shared. "I was more alive than I'd ever been. I was super conscious." Suspended in what he calls a bubble of light, Olsen felt something extraordinary. peace, awareness, and a connection that defied the physical world. What makes his account even more profound is that his wife, though physically gone, communicated with him. She didn't just console him, she gave him a choice. She kept saying, "You gotta go back. You can't come. You can't be here." Together, they made the difficult decision that he would return to raise their surviving son, knowing the child would be orphaned if he didn't. For Olson, the moment solidified a new understanding of purpose. It's rooted in free will and the choices we make, even in the face of unimaginable loss. Olson's out-of-body experience didn't stop there. He recalls floating through time and space, observing his own body and the people around him, specifically the medical staff working to save his life. But it was more than just observation. He describes a profound sense of unity with them, as if their lives and emotions were intertwined with his own. "I knew them perfectly," he said. "Their love, their hate, their challenges, their motivations, their failures. They were me, and I was them. There was a oneness that changed me forever." This overwhelming connection to others, this sense of shared humanity, fundamentally reshaped Olson's perspective. Raised in a conservative Christian household, Jeffrey found that his near-death experience profoundly deepened his spiritual understanding. Reflecting on what he encountered, he says it brought him closer to the core teachings of Jesus. "I am the man in prison. I am the beggar in the street," he explained, referencing the interconnectedness he felt during his time outside of his body. Olson describes being enveloped by a sense of unconditional love, so powerful that it shattered any notions of judgment or comparison. "Judgments and comparisons literally just went out the window," he shared, emphasizing how the experience reshaped his worldview. The lessons he gleaned of unity, compassion, and love mirror the spiritual principles he grew up with, but in a way that transcended dogma or tradition. Jeffrey Olson has now authored the book Knowing, Memoirs of a Journey Beyond the Veil and Choosing Joy After Tragic Loss. He doesn't see his experience as writing bestsellers or leading crowds in a megachurch. In fact, he's walked away from social media entirely. For Olson, life's meaning is far simpler and more personal. "If I really want to change the world," he says, "I've got to focus on the people under my own roof, in my own community, and make hands-on connections." To him, being a present husband, father, and friend is the ultimate expression of purpose, proving that changing the world starts with the small but powerful connections closest to home. For Ingrid Honkala, her near-death experience came much earlier in life, when she was just a toddler. Living in Bogota, Colombia, she was playing near a rainwater tank used for washing clothes. Her young housekeeper, who should have been watching her, got distracted, and Honkala fell into the tank. Within moments, she began to lose consciousness, slipping further into the water. What happened next borders on the inexplicable. Honkala's mother, who was miles away at work, felt an overwhelming sense that something was wrong. Trusting her instincts, she rushed home, arriving just in time to find her daughter and resuscitate her. While Honkala was too young to understand the science of what happened, the experience left a deep and lasting mark on her life. Even at such a young age, Honkala vividly remembers a sense of calm and peace during the moments she was submerged, something she's carried with her ever since. That early brush with death became a foundation for her understanding of life, purpose, and the invisible connections that often guide us. Ingrid Honkala's near-death experience was a profound journey that reshaped her understanding of existence. "My mom said I was like a rag doll," Honkala recalled in a video. "My lips were completely blue. There was no life in my body." But while her body lay lifeless, Honkala says her consciousness drifted into another realm, a space of pure nothingness. She described this dimension as a place without sound, color, movement, or even meaning. Yet it was filled with an overwhelming sense of peace. "I had this sense that everything was going to be okay," Honkala shared with Shondaland. For her, this wasn't just an absence of fear. It was a state of total unity, a feeling of being at one with everything. As her mother, trained in CPR, pulled her back to life, Honkala felt a sudden jolt, an awareness of the discomfort and weight that comes with inhabiting a human body. The contrast between the peace she experienced and the physical world was stark. Yet the event left her profoundly changed. What's extraordinary is how this near-death moment seemed to unlock something within her. Soon after, the toddler developed abilities far beyond her years. She could read, solve math problems, and tackle complex puzzles with ease. Along with these newfound skills came a heightened awareness of life itself, a clarity that would shape her perspective moving forward. For Ingrid Honkola, her near-death experience brought an extraordinary sense of clarity. "Oh, we humans are clearly a spirit and are eternal beings," she realized. This understanding shifted how she viewed life, making her less attached to the material world. This is what I have found with a lot of people who have had near-death experiences. We are less attached, she explained. For Honkola, there's a deeper reality that transcends the roles we play on Earth. For me, the true purpose of life is to remember that we are the light of the universe. Armed with this awareness, Honkola pursued a remarkable career rooted in science and exploration. She earned a PhD in marine biology and worked with prestigious organizations like NASA, the Colombian Navy, and United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Yet, even at the pinnacle of her field, she felt called to something greater. Honkola eventually left her scientific career to focus on writing, teaching, and guiding others towards spiritual growth. Her book, A Brightly Guided Life: How a Scientist Learned to Hear Her Inner Wisdom, merges her background in science with the spiritual insights gained from her near-death experience. Honkola now devotes her time to mentoring, hosting retreats, and lecturing on raising consciousness and living a purposeful life. Her journey is a proof of the balance between scientific exploration and spiritual discovery, offering a blueprint for anyone seeking deeper meaning. For Ingrid Honkola, purpose isn't about grandeur or titles. It's about connection and intention. "Nothing in the universe lacks purpose," she explains. "Everything that ever happened brought me to this moment." For her, the mission isn't tied to specific roles or achievements, but to how we choose to bring light into the world. Whether you're a doctor, a carpenter, a housekeeper, whatever, being of service and being creative shines that light for others. That's the purpose. Honkola believes our ultimate goal is to help each other remember the essence of who we are, beings of light. Her guiding question? How can I, in my daily life, bring light to the world? The first time Peter Panagore faced death, it was a battle against the relentless cold. In 1980, at just 21 years old, he nearly froze to death while ice climbing with a friend on a mountain at the Alberta-British Columbia border in Canada. Panagore was no stranger to snow. He had plenty of experience exploring icy terrains and even camping in snow caves. But this time, the elements turned against him, and what started as an adventure quickly spiraled into a fight for survival. What Panagore experienced on that mountain would forever change his perspective on life and death. His story, like Honkola, sheds light on the lessons and clarity that can emerge from the brink of mortality. Ill-prepared for the harsh conditions, he and his companion fell behind their group and ended up stranded on a ledge as night fell. The temperature plummeted by 30 degrees, leaving Panagore violently shivering as his body fought to stay alive. Even his eyeballs began to freeze, a terrifying sign of the late stages of hypothermia. As his condition worsened, Panagore drifted toward what felt like sleep, his vision narrowing until it went completely dark, like a camera shutter snapping closed. But instead of the mountain around him, he says, where the mountain should have been, there was an opening of infinite darkness. That darkness, he later recounted, led to an encounter with a being of immense presence. In this state, Panagore pleaded to return to life. The being ultimately allowed it, and hours later, his climbing companion shook him awake, convinced he had already died. The moment he woke up, Panagore was stunned. "I didn't understand. I was confused," he told the media. But despite the disorientation, he came back with something extraordinary, a sense of purpose. The experience had stripped life down to its essence, leaving him with an undeniable clarity about the importance of being alive and connected. That clarity would shape the rest of his journey, much like the freezing mountain shaped the man who survived it. After surviving the ordeal on the mountain, he became a progressive Christian clergyperson, dedicating his life to enlightenment and spiritual work. His ministry went beyond the pulpit. He worked with the homeless, migrants, victims of abuse, the grieving, and the dying. I worked with the homeless and the poor, migrants, the ailing and the wounded, children and the elderly, and the dying and the grieving, he shared. Through his work, Panagore sought to bridge the gap between his own profound spiritual encounter and the divine connection others longed to find. As if one near-death experience wasn't enough, Panagore had another in 2016. Around the time his first book, Heaven is Beautiful: How Dying Taught Me That Death is Just the Beginning, was released, he suffered a heart attack. The experience left him transformed yet again, but this time it pushed him even further from traditional faith. Panagore began to question the dogmatic view of Jesus as a supernatural figure, explaining, "I don't see him that way. He's more like me." He came to believe that all humans have the same innate abilities to connect with the cosmic force that binds life together, to heal and to transcend time and space. Peter Panagore views his life's mission with simplicity and humility. "My purpose has been to be a helper," he told. For him, living is about aligning with the divine as much as possible and letting that connection guide his actions naturally. His focus is on relieving suffering and bringing hope and inspiration to those who need it most. "That's really my job," he said, a profound yet straightforward commitment to being a source of light for others. Of course, embodying this purpose isn't always smooth sailing. Panagore acknowledges the very human challenges of betrayal, grief, misfortune, and the everyday frustrations that can make life feel far from divine. One moment that stands out is when a driver recently cut him off, nearly causing an accident. Peter Panagore approaches life's difficult moments, like dealing with rude or careless people, with a perspective shaped by his near-death experiences. "How do you face people who are jerks to you?" he reflects. "Well, I have emotions. I could taste metal in my mouth. The whole thing. But I took a breath and thought, I don't blame him for being a human being." For Panagore, the realization that everyone is flawed has been transformative. "One of the things that happened to me when I was dead is that I saw that every human being is as broken as me," he says. This understanding allows him to see past the surface to the light within others. "I know others can't really hurt me. I'm an eternal being." That knowledge, which might sound radical or even unbelievable to some, fuels Panagore's life with a sense of fun, curiosity, and creativity. His purpose, he says, is to express the inexpressible, to share the divine light that he believes everyone originates from and will ultimately return to. His experiences have given him not just a profound sense of purpose, but also a way of moving through the world with grace and connection, even in the face of life's daily frustrations. Besides these heart-touching stories, some celebrities have had near-death experiences that feel straight out of a movie, literally. Take Brendan Fraser, for instance. While shooting The Mummy, he wanted a hanging scene to look so convincing that things got dangerously real. Brendan pushed himself to nail the shot, only to end up almost hanging himself for real. During the scene, he stood on a platform with a rope around his neck, determined to sell the intensity of the moment. He later explained how he tried to make it look as authentic as possible, breathing deeply, setting his stance, and focusing on the performance. But then, things spiraled. His feet slipped, and suddenly the rope started tightening. Brendan described how his vision began fading as his body had nowhere to go, and then out. The next thing he knew, the stunt coordinator was clapping in his face, yelling for him to wake up. When Brendan finally came to, the coordinator cracked a joke, saying, "Congrats, man. You're in the club now. Mel Gibson passed out filming Braveheart too." Honestly, This was wild. It's one thing to get into character, but Brendan Fraser quite literally risked his life for the role. Speaking of pushing the limits, Leonardo DiCaprio had a brush with death that sounds like a scene from one of his thrillers. Except this time, there were no cameras rolling, just Leo, gravity, and a malfunctioning parachute. In 2016, during an interview with Ellen DeGeneres, Leo shared what went down during his first and only skydiving adventure. Things started off normal enough. He jumped out of the plane strapped to an instructor, ready for the thrill. But then, his first parachute failed to open. Yes, it failed. Imagine the panic. Leo explained how the instructor cut the cord on the faulty chute, sending them both into a terrifying freefall. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the backup parachute didn't deploy properly either. It got tangled for what Leo described as 20 to 30 seconds, which probably felt like an eternity. Eventually, the instructor managed to untangle the backup, but they were falling so fast by then that he warned Leo they'd likely break their legs upon landing. Luckily, they didn't, but Leo made it clear he'll never go skydiving again, calling it one of the worst experiences of my life. Can you blame him, though? Surviving a double parachute failure isn't just rare, it's almost unheard of. Makes you wonder, would you ever take the leap knowing things can go this wrong? If you think Leo DiCaprio's skydiving nightmare was intense, wait until you hear about his close call in the air. This guy seems to have a knack for dodging disasters. During another chat with Ellen DeGeneres, Leo recounted what he called the scariest moment of his life. A plane ride to Russia that turned into something no one had expected. As he stared out the window mid-flight, he noticed something you'd never want to see. One of the engines bursting into flames. Not just a little spark, an actual fireball. Leo said he was the only passenger who seemed to notice the drama unfolding outside, which left him stunned. For a moment, he even thought he was already dead, wondering why no one else was reacting. But then panic set in, and he admitted he started screaming, fully freaked out. The situation didn't get any better. The plane had to dump fuel for 45 minutes before making an emergency landing. But the drama wasn't over yet. When the plane hit the runway, the tires exploded. Yes, all of them. Surviving one near-death experience is enough for most people. But Leo? He seems to be collecting them. Would you even set foot on another plane after something like that? Because he clearly did, and we still can't decide if that's bravery or just plain wild. Jackie Chan is no stranger to pain. He's practically the poster boy for pushing the limits of stunt work. From broken bones to near-death experiences, he's faced it all. But one incident while filming Armor of God stands out as one of his closest calls. So, Jackie's character was supposed to down a beer and pull off an epic leap from a ledge to a tree. In true 80s fashion, they didn't use a prop can. This was the real deal. The first take went off without a hitch, but Jackie wasn't satisfied. He wanted it faster, sharper, and more dynamic. Like a monkey, as he put it. So, they reset. Jackie opened another beer, took a swig, and went for it again. But this time, things went horribly wrong. He lost his grip mid-swing, fell hard, and landed on a rock. At first, he tried to stand, but the pain in his back was overwhelming. Then his body went completely numb. Blood started trickling from his ear, a clear sign something was seriously wrong. The crew rushed to help, but moving him down the mountain was no easy task. When they finally reached the hospital, doctors found that he'd cracked his skull and a bone fragment had pierced his brain. Jackie later admitted he came dangerously close to losing his life. It's mind-blowing to think that after surviving something this intense, Jackie Chan didn't just keep making movies, he kept performing his own stunts. Angus Cloud's real-life survival story sounds like something out of a gritty drama, but it's completely true. Back in 2013, he found himself in a terrifying situation that could have easily ended much worse. While walking alone through downtown Oakland late at night, Angus didn't notice an open construction ditch in front of him until it was too late. He fell in, hitting hard, and everything went black. When he woke up at the bottom, 12 hours had passed. But the nightmare didn't stop there. Angus quickly realized he was trapped and badly injured. His skull was broken, though the skin was intact, which caused internal bleeding that built up pressure on his brain. On top of that, several of his fingers were also broken. Despite the pain and disorientation, he somehow managed to climb out of the ditch. He later admitted it was an excruciating struggle, saying, "It was hella hard to climb out." Angus Cloud's escape from the construction ditch was only the start of his nightmare. After pulling himself out, broken fingers and all, he somehow got on a bus and made his way to his mom's house. By the time he got there, things were bad. His vision was blurry, and he could barely string together a full sentence. At first, his mom thought something entirely different was going on. "I was 14 or 15, Angus explained, "and she thought I was on drugs because my pupils were dilated." He tried to explain what happened, but the words wouldn't come out right. Frustrated and exhausted, he told her he'd just go to bed. Thankfully, his mom refused to let him sleep. Instead, she gave him water, which led to a horrifying moment. He threw up mouthfuls of bright red blood. That's when she knew it was serious and rushed him to the hospital. Doctors discovered the full extent of his injuries, a broken skull that required immediate surgery. They cut his head open, inserted screws and a metal plate to stabilize the fracture, and patched him back up. As Angus casually put it, "They sealed me back up, and that was that." It's crazy to think how close he came to not making it. If his mom hadn't stopped him from going to bed that night, things could have taken a tragic turn. Sometimes it's the little decisions that end up saving lives. Besides Angus, Nikki Sixx has one of the most surreal survival stories out there, complete with an out-of-body experience that sounds like something out of a movie. Before getting sober in 2001 and becoming a vocal advocate for recovery, the Motley Crue bassist had a close brush with death that was almost final. In a 2017, Nicky opened up about his overdose in 1987, saying illicit substances nearly killed him, and not just figuratively. "For 2 minutes, I was pronounced clinically dead," he revealed. It all went down during a chaotic night at Hollywood's Franklin Plaza Apartments, where Nicky was partying hard, mixing several illicit substances with alcohol. Then, his heart stopped. According to Newsweek, it happened on December 23rd, when his dealer gave him a fatal dose. Someone called an ambulance, but by the time paramedics arrived, Nicky was gone. It took 2 adrenaline shots to bring him back, but what he remembered during those minutes of death is what really gives you chills. In his book, The Dirt, Nicky described the moment he felt his soul, or whatever it was, being gently pulled upward. Everything around him turned bright white, and when he looked down, he realized he had left his body entirely. Nikki Sixx's near-death experience didn't just reshape his life. It also inspired one of Motley Crue's biggest hits, Kickstart My Heart. But like most rock and roll stories, not everyone agrees on exactly how things went down. Drummer Steven Adler has a very different version of events. Speaking to Australia's Triple M, Adler claimed that there were no adrenaline shots involved. Instead, he said, "I dragged him into the shower with a broken hand, turned on the cold water, and started slapping him in the face with my cast." When paramedics finally arrived, Adler said they simply performed chest compressions and revived him. No adrenaline needles in sight. And Nicky isn't the only rock star with a literal death story. Slash, the legendary guitarist from Guns N' Roses, had his own terrifying moment in the early 2000s while partying in San Francisco. What started as a good time took a dark turn after a blowout argument with his fiancée. Frustrated, Slash decided to hit the streets, saying to himself, "I'm in Frisco, smack heaven, I'm going to get loaded." Things were fun for a while, as Slash described, until they weren't. He passed out in his hotel hallway, where he was later told he had actually died for 8 minutes. Thankfully, paramedics managed to revive him, but the brush with death left a mark. Talking to The Guardian, Slash shared a wild memory from one chaotic night. He said drug dealers showed up at his hotel room around 5 in the morning, loaded with everything you can imagine. And what did Slash do? He admitted he took it all. A little later, wandering out into the hallway, he asked a maid where the elevator was. And then, He collapsed right in front of her. This little Spanish lady, it freaked her out, he joked. But that wasn't the end of it. Slash told BBC Radio 5 that when the paramedics woke him up, it was like a jolt of energy and chaos all at once. Lights, voices, and sheer panic. He described it as a feeling you'd never forget. And guess what? After waking up in the hospital, he decided to check himself out early because Guns N' Roses had a show the next night. Laughing about it later with Louder, he said it really put Axl Rose's infamous stage delays into perspective. Now that's rock and roll dedication. Or recklessness? You decide. Switching gears to June 2014, comedian Tracy Morgan went through an ordeal that's no laughing matter. A tractor-trailer slammed into his limo bus, flipping it over and causing utter chaos. Tracy wasn't alone. 3 others in the vehicle were rushed to the hospital. But tragically, his close friend and fellow comedian James McNair didn't make it. Morgan's injuries were no joke. He suffered a broken leg, ribs, and nose, and was in a coma for 2 weeks. When he woke up, it wasn't just physical pain. He couldn't even remember the crash. On top of that, he dealt with memory issues, constant headaches, and even nosebleeds. Imagine waking up after something like that, knowing your life had been flipped upside down. Literally. Tracy Morgan's return to Saturday Night Live in October 2015 was nothing short of epic. But the road back to normal was far from smooth. Talking to Complex a month later, Morgan revealed something that left fans stunned. He said he died during his time in the hospital. Reflecting on the experience, he explained, "You don't just go through something like that and come out the same." He shared that he went to the other side, and what he saw was unforgettable. According to Morgan, God had a message for him. "Your room ain't ready. I still got something for you to do." He said that moment of divine clarity brought him back. And there he was, cracking jokes and giving interviews, proof that life had more in store for him. Now, let's talk rock stars. While most of them toe the line between life and death, thanks to wild partying, Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age had a completely different story. Back in 2010, while undergoing leg surgery, things took a terrifying turn. He flatlined on the operating table. For years, Homme didn't talk about it, but when he did, the details were chilling. On a podcast, he revealed that he had MRSA, an antibiotic-resistant staph infection that hit him hard because his immune system was already wrecked. "People die from that all the time," Homme admitted, and he was one of them. For a brief, life-altering moment, Josh Homme's brush with death was as eerie as it gets. While doctors were trying to insert an oxygen tube during surgery, something went horribly wrong. He described it bluntly. He kind of choked to death. Unlike the classic tales of bright tunnels and heavenly visions, Homme said there was nothing, no light, no sound, just silence. Thankfully, the doctors revived him and completed the surgery, but when he woke up, things weren't the same. For a guy who's always had music playing in his mind since childhood, waking up to silence was terrifying. "I heard nothing," he said, a quiet that lasted for years. Imagine that. A rock star with no internal soundtrack. It's the kind of absence that shakes you to your core. But Homme actually came out of this ordeal grateful. Speaking on the podcast, he admitted that being bedridden for 4 long months, hooked up to tubes, completely changed him. It was brutal, but in hindsight, he called it the greatest thing it could ever do for him. Why? Because it forced him to reassess his life. He learned what truly mattered, and that shift in perspective made him stronger. Ever wonder what really happens inside your head during a near-death experience? These intense moments aren't just dramatic. They offer fascinating insights into how the mind behaves when pushed to the edge. A close call with death can leave more than just a memory. It can change how people see the world and themselves, and it might even give us clues about how the brain works under extreme stress. Let's break it down. During these experiences, people often report vivid sensations, seeing bright lights, reliving memories, or feeling a sense of calm. But what's causing these? Is it the brain's final power surge, Or could it be something more profound? Scientists studying this phenomenon believe it could reveal a lot about how our brains process stress, fear, and even the concept of time. Ernest Hemingway was more than just a literary legend. He was someone who faced death head-on. As a young soldier in the First World War, he was seriously injured by an exploding shell. And the experience shaped not only his life, but also his writing. In a letter home, Hemingway described death as a very simple thing, and said it would have been the easiest thing I ever did. That calm acceptance of mortality is haunting, but it's also a window into how profound near-death experiences can be. Years later, Hemingway drew from that traumatic moment for his story, The Snows of Kilimanjaro. In it, a dying man experiences a surreal peace as pain vanishes, and he flies through a storm with a bush pilot, only to emerge into blinding sunlight, with the snowy peak of Kilimanjaro before him. It's more than just a story. It mirrors classic elements of near-death experiences: darkness, release from pain, the sensation of moving into light, and an overwhelming feeling of calm. Near-death experiences, or NDEs, are often triggered by extreme, life-threatening situations, heart attacks, accidents, or moments when the body simply can't hold on any longer. Scientists estimate that around 1 in 10 cardiac arrest patients in hospitals go through an NDE. Thousands of survivors have reported similar moments, leaving their bodies, seeing things from above, and stepping into what feels like another realm, free from the rules of time and space. What's even more intriguing, these moments often leave a permanent mark. Many people say their NDEs transform them, changing how they view life, death, and everything in between. But is it the brain's last-ditch effort to protect itself? Or is there something deeper going on? Near-death experiences are more than random flashes of imagination. In fact, they're surprisingly consistent across people and cultures, which makes them all the more fascinating. Many survivors report becoming completely free of pain, seeing a bright light at the end of a tunnel, or even detaching from their own bodies, watching events unfold from above. Some describe feeling like they're floating through space or meeting loved ones, alive or deceased. Others encounter what they believe are spiritual beings, like angels. And let's not forget the classic "my life flashed before my eyes" moment. People often relive memories, good and bad, in vivid detail. The strangest part, time feels totally warped. Some say it slows down, others feel like they're stepping outside of it entirely. Scientists suggest that these experiences might have a physical explanation, like narrowing tunnel vision caused by reduced blood flow to the retina. But can biology alone explain something that feels so profound? While most of what we hear about NDEs is uplifting, bliss, peace, a sense of oneness with the universe, not every experience is so comforting. For some, it's the exact opposite. These negative NDEs are filled with terror, loneliness, and despair. Imagine feeling the crushing weight of isolation or sheer panic while your body fights for survival. The contrast is striking. On one hand, there's peace and light, a sense of being connected to something divine. On the other, there's anguish and fear. What's even more interesting is the disconnect between the physical trauma happening to the body and the intense emotions the mind experiences. One thing is universal. A brush with death shakes you to the core. It forces you to confront life's fragility, stripping away the mental defenses that keep thoughts of mortality at bay. While most people eventually move past the emotional shock of a life-threatening event, NDEs are different. They don't fade into the background. Decades later, those who've experienced them often recall them with an intensity and clarity that's hard to ignore. A fascinating 2017 study out of the University of Virginia dug into this phenomenon. Researchers surveyed 122 people who had NDEs, asking them to compare those memories to real and imagined events from the same time. The result? NDE memories were more vivid and detailed than anything else, real or imagined. People describe them as feeling realer than real. a paradox considering they often occurred when the brain was severely compromised. Could these vivid, unforgettable experiences simply be the brain's desperate attempt to make sense of chaos? Or do they offer a glimpse into something beyond our understanding? The paradox of heightened cognition during a time when the brain should barely function adds another layer to the mystery. Near-death experiences weren't always taken seriously. For centuries, they were dismissed as hallucinations or fevered imaginations, those so-called deathbed visions. But everything changed in the last quarter of the 20th century when researchers like Raymond Moody and Bruce M. Grayson turned this mysterious phenomenon into a legitimate field of study. Moody's 1975 book Life After Life introduced the term near-death experience to the world, breaking open a conversation that had long been ignored. Grayson, on the other hand, dug into the science, co-authoring the Handbook of Near-Death Experiences in 2009 and looking for patterns in people's stories. Thanks to their work, NDEs went from being dismissed as fantasy to becoming one of the most intriguing areas of research in human consciousness. Let's be real, these experiences feel authentic. Whether it's seeing loved ones, traveling toward light, or detaching from their bodies, people who've had NDEs are convinced of their reality. But as fascinating as they are, science looks at these moments with a grounded lens. Researchers operate under the idea that everything we experience, our thoughts, feelings, and memories, is the result of the brain's natural functions, not supernatural forces. And why not? That assumption has powered centuries of breakthroughs in science and technology. Unless someone produces hard, objective evidence to suggest otherwise, there's no reason to abandon this view. What makes NDEs so fascinating is how they challenge everything we think we know about consciousness. These episodes, often lasting less than an hour, have a permanent impact on people. They describe transformations that are nothing short of profound, a complete loss of fear of death, a newfound focus on what really matters, and a desire to live for the greater good. For some, like Ernest Hemingway, it even triggered a lifelong fascination, or obsession with risk and mortality. Interestingly, NDEs share similarities with another fascinating phenomenon: the mystical states reported by people who've used hallucinogenic substances. These substances, which interact with serotonin in the brain, often create vivid, life-altering visions and sensations. Whether used in spiritual ceremonies, religious rituals, or recreationally, the parallels to NDEs are striking. Feelings of transcendence, out-of-body journeys, and a connection to something far beyond our everyday reality. What's most fascinating about NDEs is that they're not tied to any specific culture, religion, or type of person. From ancient texts like the Tibetan Book of the Dead to modern stories from hospital rooms, these experiences transcend time and belief systems. Whether you're deeply religious or don't believe in an afterlife at all, the odds of having an NDE are about the same. For those with religious backgrounds, it's easy to interpret an NDE as a glimpse of heaven, hell, or some kind of divine realm. But here's the catch. Devout believers are no more likely to experience an NDE than someone with no spiritual practice at all. This raises intriguing questions about whether these experiences are shaped more by biology than belief. The neurological mystery behind near-death experiences is as complex as it is fascinating. One major hurdle? These events often occur in chaotic, life-threatening moments, far from the controlled environment of a lab, where scientists could use tools like brain scans or EEGs to record what's going on in real time. Take cardiac arrest as an example. When the heart stops beating, what doctors call coding, the brain is suddenly deprived of oxygen and blood flow. Within seconds, consciousness fades and brain activity grinds to a halt, with the EEG going completely flat. Regions of the brain shut down like power outages in a city, one neighborhood at a time. But even as this shutdown occurs, the mind continues to weave a story, drawing on personal memories, experiences, and cultural influences. For the person experiencing it, this narrative feels as real as any waking moment. It's only when blood flow and oxygen are restored that the brain boots up again, and the person re-enters their waking consciousness. What happens during that shutdown phase? That's the space where NDEs, complete with vivid, often surreal experiences, are born. Interestingly, scientists have seen hints of NDE-like phenomena in controlled settings, like when NASA astronauts and test pilots are exposed to extreme G-forces. During Cold War experiments, these individuals were spun in high-speed centrifuges to the point where their brains were starved of blood, causing them to faint. When consciousness returned, they described strikingly similar sensations: tunnel vision, bright lights, floating, out-of-body experiences, and even short, vivid dreams involving family members. These NDE-light episodes lacked any religious or mystical undertones, possibly because the subjects knew the situation was artificial. But the parallels are undeniable, and they offer valuable insight into how the brain responds to extreme stress. Studying NDEs in a lab setting remains a massive challenge. After all, these events can't be intentionally triggered in humans without risking lives. But could animals hold some clues? Researchers are exploring whether mice, under controlled conditions, experience similar bursts of euphoria or memory recall near death. It's a bold idea, but one that could reveal surprising insights about the universal mechanics of the brain's final moments. What's clear is that NDEs are shaped by the brain's unique ability to tell a story, even under the most extreme conditions. Whether it's a product of dying neurons, a survival mechanism, or something more profound, these experiences feel deeply authentic to those who go through them. Could the answers lie in the brain's last desperate attempt to make sense of chaos? Or are we just scratching the surface of something we barely understand? As scientists continue to study both human and animal models, we may edge closer to solving this puzzle. Until then, NDEs remain a tantalizing mix of mystery, memory, and the mind's incredible power. If you were to experience a near-death moment, what do you think your mind would show you? Peaceful memories, something mystical, or pure survival instincts? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more.